Collation of presidential election results ongoing and INEC announces results for Ekiti State.
INEC blames challenges with its results viewing portal on technical hitches.
More observers applaud use of technology for general elections.
Determination of the electorate, where even where they have skirmish in some polling booths, they come back and continue voting, which has brought about the extension.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall review the presidential and National Assembly elections.
The presidential and National Assembly elections have been conducted nationwide, except for that of Esan North, Esan South, Gweben Federal Constituency in Edo State, which has been rescheduled for March 11 because of the absence of the logo of one of the political parties in the contest on the ballot paper.
Also rescheduled is the senatorial election for Enugu East following the assassination of the candidate of the Labour Party. But collation of results for the presidential election is, however, underway, with Ekiti State so far being the only state to have been declared by the Independent National Electoral Commission. INEC says that it will resume announcement of the presidential election results by 11 later this morning, when more states expectedly would have turned in their collated results for the presidential polls. However, National Assembly results are already trickling in from various parts of the country.
And Saturday's presidential and National Assembly elections revealed an uncommon display of patriotism by the Nigerian electorate as they defied the scorching heat of the sun and a heavy downpour in many parts of the country to cast the ballot in favor of their preferred candidates.
The astonishing turnout of voters for the presidential and National Assembly polls was, however, marred by the late arrival of INEC officials and electoral materials in a vast number of polling units, for which the INEC chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, has duly apologized, attributing it to logistics challenges. But there were also cases of persons who had difficulty in locating their polling units following INEC's voter redistribution exercise much earlier.
And perhaps more disturbing about Saturday's election were some incidences of voter intimidation and destruction of ballot boxes by thugs in polling units that were supposed to have been manned by security operatives.
Well, INEC itself alluded to the fact that its BVA machines, that is the bimodal voter accreditation system machines, were targeted by thugs, and about 8 of such machines were confirmed stolen in Katsina, Delta, and Anambra states. And talking about voter intimidation, which you mentioned earlier, Juman, there was also a viral video of someone threatening voters on a queue to leave a particular polling unit if they were not voting for a particular political party.
Now, the shortcomings notwithstanding, Nigerians showed resilience even in the face of late arrival of materials, which made accreditation and voting stretch through the wee hours of Sunday in some parts of the country. And voters patiently waited and turned on the touchlight of their mobile phones to ensure they see the end of collation and counting of votes at the polling units. Quite amazing there.
Yeah, it was a great display of enthusiasm and patriotism as the voters, like we just indicated, waited patiently to be sure that they exercise their civic rights in choosing the candidates of the political parties that they prefer. Now, voters also reportedly mobilized to transport INEC officials and materials to polling units where there were transportation snags. There were also accounts of delay, however, in uploading results in a number of polling units in different parts of the country, as some INEC officials complained of poor network to upload the results with the beavers. Now, some of the political parties have already expressed reservations about this delay, which they say impacted on the confidence of voters in the electoral process.
So what went wrong or right in the presidential and National Assembly elections? We will find out from our panel of guests as we review the first round of the 2023 general elections on Good Morning Nigeria today, the first edition for the week. You're welcome to the program. I am Jumai Yusuf.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Jumai to also welcome you to the program. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority and broadcasting from Abuja, the nation's capital, where we have our headquarters studios. In the course of the program, we have our regular complimentary segments, and those include newspaper review and business. For now, we take the morning news highlights with our colleague, Nolene Ebelame. Good morning, Nolene.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. INEC has commenced the collation of results for the presidential election, beginning with Ekiti State. Ekiti was the only state available with presidential election results as at Sunday, and collation will resume at 11 this morning.
Right now, we have only Ekiti State, but we are aware that there will be many more states. We will make a special arrangement to bring them over quickly, where there are no commercial flights to bring them, and where they are separated by considerable distance from Abuja.
The Independent National Electoral Commission says it is aware of challenges with the INEC results viewing portal, IREF, unlike in off-season elections where the portal was used. A statement by the National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, said that technical hitches are related to scaling up the IREF from a platform for managing off-season state elections to one for managing nationwide general elections, adding that it is not unusual for glitches to occur and be corrected in such situations. Consequently, the Commission wishes to assure Nigerians that the challenges are not due to any intrusion or sabotage of their systems and that the IREF remains well secured. Civil society organizations have observed that many eligible voters were disenfranchised as they were unable to cast their ballot on Saturday. They urged INEC to consider these matters among other troubling complaints.
Our role as civil society and independent observer is to support the process and ensure her integrity. The time is of essence, and INEC must respond.
We want to say that as Ready to Lead Africa and our partners here, we call on Nigerians to remain calm, work with INEC.
Similarly, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has asked the national chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, to instruct the collation officers of Saturday's election to upload the results from the polling units to the INEC server. Atiku says that this has become necessary to checkmate some governors who are trying to compromise the results at the local government collation level. He called on Nigerians to be calm but vigilant and ensure that anti-democratic elements do not steal their mandate. The African Union Development Agency has described the deployment of technology, particularly the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, as a game changer in the Nigerian elections and worthy of emulation by African countries. This follows an interim assessment of presidential and National Assembly elections at NEPA's Situation Room in Abuja.
And going forward, I want INEC to build on this so that it will serve as an example for the African countries.
The determination of the electorate, where even where they have skirmish in some polling booths, they come back and continue voting, which has brought about the extension.
In other news, following an outbreak of a major fire incident which has raised the popular Maiduguri Monday market, President Muhammadu Buhari has called for vigilance as winds and rising temperatures increase the risk of fires in forests, homes, public buildings and markets. The president, who expressed grief over the destruction caused by the early morning fire on Sunday, said the nation's prayers and condolences are with the hard-working traders and their families who have reportedly saved very little or nothing from the fire. He urges state and federal agencies responsible for fire management to strengthen response mechanisms. That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Jummai and Kingsley after the commercial break. Please don't go away. I am Norlene Ebel Ame. Good morning.
Esther, you're late again. Esther?
Morning, Esther.
Airtel, the smartphone network. Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections alone. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles, and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
Welcome back, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Newspaper review is next. Newspaper reviewer Chukwudi Okoli Ogbaja is here in the studio. Good morning, Chukwudi.
Good morning, Juma. How are you doing today?
I hope you had a splendid weekend. I'm okay.
I did. It was a weekend of high expectations, a weekend of anxiety, but it came and went. And the naysayers and doomsday foretellers were put to shame. We've had the first of the 2 days of elections we're expecting in February and March. And we are happy as a country. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Yes.
Well, we have some papers here in the studio. Let's quickly go to them and find out what's trending.
Yes.
We have the Nation newspaper. That's what I have with me. And above the masthead, interbank transactions crossed 25 trillion naira mark in 180 days. You find the details on page 16. Stock market defies political risk with 2.02 trillion gain, and you find the details on page 15. Rising oil production raises budget 2023 hope. You find also the details on page 15. And just below the masthead, Pape, Messi, Benzema battle for FIFA best player. Find details on page 31. And DSS arrest wreck, page 6. Inside the papers, you'll find ABC, PDP, LP bicker over presidential election results. INEC defends integrity of results reviewing portal. Collation of presidential election results resumes today. EU observer allows INEC election officials and ad hoc staff. You find the details on 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's the pages. And the headlines we have in the Nation newspaper: presidential polls results, APC, PCC calls for calm. With Friday, INEC declares Tinubu winner in Ekiti. Oshomole, Daniel, Yayi, Goje orders for 10th Senate. You can see the pictures of those who have already won the elections in their areas and have been declared winners. And they are all there, new faces and old faces coming back. Down the Nation newspaper, 3 grandpas, Nigerian, arrested over 52 kg cocaine, skunk in Lagos, Kwara, Plateau. You find the details on page 6. I think that's what I have in the Nation's newspaper. Casey?
All right, Chukwudi, we have to come back to you so that we can discuss the issues that, of course, arising from the election.
Yes, Kingsley, I started on a very optimistic note. I said it is a shame to those who were thinking that we would never have elections, that this would happen, that would not happen, and all that. You know, sometimes you begin to ask yourself what pool people are taking their information from. Is it that some people wake up in the morning and decide that the only assignment they have for themselves is making every other person around them feel sad by putting out news that doesn't, you know, give us hopes of a brighter tomorrow? So I'm happy that the election has come. Yes, the first in the 2-day exercise spread over February and March. So that has happened. Well, apart from reported cases of the reported case of attempt by insurgents, so to speak.
In Goza local
Goza.
government, yes.
Just Goza.
Just Goza.
That's the point I want to make. Just Goza.
Goza local government.
So you cannot say.
And they came in through the mountains, the Cameroon
They actually
mountains.
shot from the mountain.
Yes, from the Cameroon.
Yes, a few people were injured and all that, but yes, I don't think any fatality has been reported.
No, not.
What does this say? The government has actually done a lot to make sure that insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, and the rest of it do not disturb our process of choosing our next set of leaders and their lawmakers. And that, I think, tells us that, what did I say the other time? If you wish it, you can have it. Vouloir c'est pouvoir. To wish or want is to be able, according to the Frenchman. You know, I dropped something about my father teaching me that optimism is half the assignment done. Yeah. Positive confession, according to a creed, you know. I am so happy, I'm excited, like a child, you know. But there are complaints, of course. INEC actually apologized for late commencement of the exercise in not a few places. I mean, it was quite a number of places. And then if they have apologized, the next thing we do is to look forward to a fairly easy process, greeting the rest of the exercise. Collation has started, as you would expect. Those who want their candidates to win before the election are already spreading news about how this person has cleared the entire universe, even though the election took place only in Nigeria. Beware of fake news. This is very important. I saw one ridiculous one. The governor of Kaduna State, somebody said it has been reported that Governor El Rufia said if somebody from one ethnic group wins, Nigeria will come to an end. First of all, they said his name is El Rufia, and he was not a governor in the fake news. He was he was President El Rufia. And people who went to school, people who are graduates, are spreading things like that. Jumai, sometimes I really shudder what kind of mental processes run this country.
Exactly.
Things happen from people you do not expect them to happen from. You understand? So, why am I saying all this? Beware of fake news, Nigerians, at this stage of the election.
Exactly. I kept getting calls, about the result, and I told them we're only waiting for the official announcement of results by INEC. So I'm not posting anything on my status or my social media account, any result, unless I get it from INEC.
And if you feel that the Nigerian authorities or the Nigerian environment is being too careful about the announcement of results, go to the BBC news app. They say that whatever they're putting out has to come from the INEC data base. This is a foreign news concern, as some people call it the best in the world. Yet they are bringing in caution into the announcement of results of election that happened in Nigeria. Why would we, as people who own the country, not be similarly cautious? Why
I saw
jump
one of
the gun?
television stations scrolling the results of the presidential election and say source INEC. But well, we just have to wait for INEC to announce the results before we can be sure of who.
That is the reasonable thing to do. Yes. That is the wise thing to do.
Well,
that is the cautious thing to do.
Yeah, I think that while we applaud the conduct of the election in most parts of the Federation, we must also not neglect to comment on the challenges that arose in the course of the elections on Saturday. And many would say that those challenges were altogether avoidable. Challenges with regard to the conduct of some of the ad hoc staff, as well as contractors for INEC. Yes. For instance, the logistics.
They were hugely logistical.
Well, for which they had signed an MOU, it was widely celebrated, and we discussed it. Now the time has come for INEC to begin to have a rethink about engagement of NURWT for the purposes of election logistics. If we recall, the 2019 elections were postponed for 1 week on account of logistics issues, and this had to do with the delivery of sensitive and non-sensitive materials, not on the day of voting itself, because they had to engage the Nigerian Air Force for purposes of delivering the materials to various locations. But this one of taking voting materials and polling officials to the polling units, of course, we just had different snags. Look, could it have been fun for anyone to have left their residence at, say, 8 in the morning, and then you don't get to vote until about 11 p.m.
It was not funny at all.
Let's be realistic. And I'm not,
it wasn't funny at all.
And this is...
the resilience of Nigerians, they waited.
No, hang on a second. It is. We have to applaud that, but there are better ways of doing this. How many persons could have waited? Some persons have medical conditions. Yes. And how long can you wait to cast your vote when you are told that polling stations or polling stations will open at time T1 and close at time T2, and materials were not arriving, or sometimes some cases until about 2:30. Again, on account of the logistic challenges that we're talking about, INEC should have a clear rethink of engaging. I don't mean any disrespect to members of NTAi. We have had them on Good Morning Nigeria. I'm talking about the Road Transport Workers Union. But in our daily considerations, in our daily transactions, how many of us do business with them? How many of us will rely on them for logistic purposes? There is an institute, there is a chartered institute of logistics in this country. Newspaper houses, at the time newspapers were booming, they dealt with logistics issues on a daily basis. You print your papers in Lagos, and you have to get them to different parts of the country.
Yes.
Come rain, come shine.
Yes.
Adverse conditions and all kinds of things. You deliver your paper.
4:30, you see them cross your community.
You see that, and you get to the newsstand, you see the publications. Yes. So why do we submit ourselves to this? And people just make nonsense of everything. Plus, I must be clear, but we talked about likely voter intimidation. We talked about voter suppression. And there were videos in circulation, and it wasn't as if anybody was playing a skit or acting some drama.
It was real.
It was real. Voters were being threatened, and everybody. This is probably the biggest challenge of it all. And I'm sure President Muhammadu Buhari, will of course be having a rethink with his inner cabinet to say we signed the Electoral Act 2022 as a game changer.
And a guide too.
As a game changer. This is the first full general application of Electoral Act 2022. What has gone right, what has gone wrong. Many will point to the things that have gone wrong. Beavers machines have been stolen, voting is being disrupted, ballot boxes are being snatched, not for the purposes of stuffing them, but to disrupt voting so that the elections in that area, in that particular spot, will be cancelled, and therefore you suppress the votes there. So you just ask yourself, are we, as I said, over 176,000 polling units? These incidents occurred in a few areas, but of course they are visible, and that's why they have been given media visibility, whether it is social or traditional media. What is it that is wrong with us? Why is it that security appeared to have failed? And what do we need to do to retrieve the integrity of our elections from scallywags and hoodlums?
Kingsley, what you're saying is that at this stage of our lives, there are some complaints that when they happen from whatever causes them, it is something we should be ashamed of. Each election in Nigeria should be an improvement on the last. Just as the Electoral Acts try to redress certain things discovered, in previous elections. But the logistics, disaster almost we saw is something we should not be proud of. I totally agree with you. And I was hoping that with all the things that have been done, what's going to happen is that the court cases we are going to see from the elections are going to be highly reduced. Do you think that is exactly what is going to happen from what we have seen now?
No.
Voter suppression, voter intimidation, all those bits of violence we saw there. The Electoral Act actually has specified offenses, even talked about outright cancellation and the rest of it. Don't you think it's going to be almost back to square one in terms of dealing with crisis that is preventable? Who are we at the end of the day? That's a question that, plagues.
Like Kingsley said, some of the, issues could be avoided.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, because the INEC chairman said at one of his presentations that it was part of the lessons learned from the 2019 elections that they used to determine how the elections, the 2023 general elections will roll. But it's like we're seeing the same old game being played out there.
I don't know. As I said, this is a conversation that will go on for a long time. Yeah. You disrupt voting. You burn ballot papers. It happened in it happened in Lagos. It happened in Benin.
Yes.
The one that happened in Ward 4 in Oredo in Benin. That's right there in the GROA.
Yeah.
And you saw the ballot papers on the ground, on the field, and several other places. So you have to. And what is the purpose? Because somebody is taking advantage of a provision of the law that where voting is disrupted, then you cancel. So the voters who have spent several hours on the queue, what happens. And then tomorrow you have another election, you expect the same set of voters to come out and cast their votes. And if they don't come out, you'll be complaining about low voter turnout, you'll be complaining about voter apathy, you'll be complaining about legitimacy.
Well, Kingsley, we'll be talking about that, you know, as we begin our conversation on the review of the 2023 general elections. We'll take a break. When we return, our conversation will begin. Do stay.
Enjoy 50% discount off in the Airtel Home Broadband Season of Love offer. Buy a router for just 10,000 Naira and get up to 240 gigabyte or a MiFi for 5,000 Naira and get up to 125 gigabyte bonus data. More data, more you. Reliable home broadband by
Airtel, the smartphone network. To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels. Leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. As a prompt for our conversation, which is to review the presidential and National Assembly elections, here's a background report by our correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi.
February 25, 2023 goes down in history as a day Nigerians turned out en masse to cast their ballots for their desired candidates in the presidential and National Assembly elections. Undeterred by the rain that fell in parts of the country and the scorching heat of the sun earlier on, the Nigerian electorate displayed uncommon patriotism and determination to ensure that their votes count. While the elections were peaceful in most parts of the country, record of snatching of beavers' machines were reported in Katsina, Bayelsa and Anambra states, coupled with late commencement of accreditation and voting in many polling units due to late arrival of INEC officials and materials. Some Nigerians have commended the security agents who were swift to apprehend some thugs who disrupted the process, but much more was expected in terms of security on election day. Although the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, had warned that only the electoral umpire can announce results, the social media has been rife with results from different quarters. There were also reports of delay in uploading results in many polling units, as some INEC officials reportedly complained of poor network to upload the results with the beavers' machines. Boko Haram struck in Goza on election day, with yet to be ascertained casualties recorded. At the moment, only Ekiti State presidential results had been announced by INEC. However, National Assembly results are trickling in from various parts of the country. What were the high and low points of the presidential and National Assembly elections? Guests in the studio will be reviewing the polls shortly.
All right, we have guests here with us in the studios to discuss these issues. First, I would like to welcome Dr. Stephen Iroro. Dr. Iroro is a political economist at the University of Abuja. Dr. Iroro, we're glad to have you this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
Okay. Also here with us this morning is Amsfree Ajanaku, the media and elections analyst, the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. Amsfree, morning and welcome.
My pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome, gentlemen, to the studio where we'll be reviewing the 2023 elections. Let's first of all get your perspective and your assessment of how the elections went on Saturday. Let's begin with you.
All right, so for us at the Center for Democracy and Development, we had projected that these elections will play out around what we describe as the 5 I's. And the 5 I's are the I's of identity, insecurity, information disorder, and then the I's of intra and inter-party squabbles. So, and true to our projections, those are actually the issues that played out. For instance, if we are to go straight to the issue of voter suppression, and I was listening to the discussion in the studio earlier, the issues of voter suppression we saw played out along the lines of identity. And we know that in these elections, identity has played a very big role in the discussion. And we also had that conversation about the fact that the way the political actors weaponized identity in this election, in the build-up, was always going to be a source of, problems in the process. And so, if there is no connection to the national identity, and somebody is talking about where a voter comes from, the voter cannot vote if he's not voting for a particular candidate because of the affiliation to that particular identity. It becomes a source of conflict, which was why we flagged, that. The other issue is what we describe as the eye of the institutions, how the institutions, will play their roles in terms of managing the process and ensuring that the process goes on smoothly. On that score, we saw, a very dismal outing in terms of the arrival of materials, opening of polls across the country. In fact, as at election day, from our data, which was fed in by our 4,933 observers deployed across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, we saw that less than 50% of polls opened on time. On the average, most polls were opening around 10:30, several hours, beyond the time that, the polls were supposed to commence. And that significantly affected the process, which was why CDD, for instance, called for extension of voting in the areas where, those challenges, were. So if we celebrate the fact that for, one of our very few times, elections proceeded without postponement. In 2015, we were on the field when the elections were postponed. In 2019, it was postponed. But the quality of the process itself, has, left so much, left us with a lot of scratching of the head as to the fact that INEC had 4 years to prepare for this process, only for us to, come to this point where we are not able to, send, even in the FCT, which is, really a place where you should say that election materials will arrive on time. You had, several cases of late arrival, and some of the challenges we are dealing with now, come from the fact that the polls started very late.
Okay, but Amsfree, we'll pause you. I know you have already touched on 2 of the 5 I's that your center flagged for the purposes of the elections. Let's bring in Dr. Stephen Iroro to get his own views. How did the elections go in your assessment?
Okay, and thank you very much. I would say that in the election, that it took place in the first place is a plus to Nigeria, because of course before the election, there were a lot of this negative vibes, that the election may be postponed, so that it took place first is a plus to Nigeria, and to the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now I followed the election, and from the beginning, to the end. Of course, I was in the studio, the verdict 2023 studio, that morning, and we saw, how the process went. Now, we must also commend, Nigerians, for showing this zest, this total commitment, to the elections, because all the stakeholders actually fared, very well, bet, for and the Independent National Electoral Commission, which was supposed to be the election management, body. The citizens, the voters, they were out there, as early as 6 a.m., 7 a.m., to cast their vote. The security men, in most places, they also deployed. The media, of course, they were everywhere, but the staffers, of the INEC, we are now the ones that, and took us a little bit, backwards, in terms of the conduct of the election. But I want to, appreciate the fact that the election held, but we must hammer on the shortfalls, in the management process of the election.
I made a comment while we were having our newspaper review, and I think Amsri was referencing that briefly, in terms of institutional responsibility for the glitches that occurred. Were these glitches directly the fault of INEC, or INEC was let down by its contractors? Gentlemen, let's so that we know where we are, because INEC, we have 176,000 plus polling stations. Yeah. And most of the complaints we're talking about now did not occur in all 176,000. But wherever they occurred, the knock-on effect was quite serious. And that's why, of course, we're having to do this postmortem, as it were, on the elections. But was INEC let down by its contractors? And if so, what should INEC have done in the first instance to ensure that its contractors did not fail it? Because remember, in 2015, we had Professor Jega here in our studios during that conduct of the elections. They were also let down by when we say contractors, in this case now we're talking about transporters. Yes. So Ansru, let's hear your views on this first.
My own perspective on that, and that's also the perspective of the CDD, is during the build up to this election, we were very, very, we stressed the point that INEC should not overpromise and underdeliver. And we made that point because if you follow the messaging from INEC kept on saying, we are ready, 100%, this is going to be the best election ever, and they raised expectations. We understand those challenges, that they are not in control of certain variables in the elections. But if you already have raised the expectations of citizens and you have promised a seamless process or a largely seamless, we know there are no perfect elections, but some of those glitches we saw were really very much, we can describe them as a letdown to the voters, because if you disenfranchise voters, if people who have come out with so much enthusiasm, wanting to participate robustly in the process, and those challenges prevent them from participating, like you rightly said, how would you expect them to come out next time? And so for us, it was a problem of maybe too much expectations. INEC did not prepare the minds of citizens to know that these challenges will come on election day. And I said it yesterday on the Nigeria, the verdict studio, where the discussion was also on that. INEC also had a responsibility to do better crisis communication, because for much of the challenges we saw on election day, people were stranded, there was no information. And if you look at even the issue of upload of results into the IREV, it's the same problem. INEC took so long to be able to communicate that this is not like something untoward is happening to the process. We are having challenges, and when there was a vacuum of in terms of information, other actors, especially on social media space, went to town with different narratives around the fact that INEC, around the notion that INEC wants to skew the process, in favor of certain partisan interest. So these were, so we are not saying that INEC is in total control of all the variables. But if you have promised so much and, there were challenges, we believe that there should have been better crisis communication to enable the voters understand that, okay, these are challenges, but, these challenges are being fixed.
Dr. Ororo, in one of the forums that the INEC chairman spoke, he said that, whatever is happening now, compilation of results and everything, is lessons learned from the 2019 elections. Would you say they learned any lesson?
Of course, they must have.
Because some of the challenges were avoidable, actually.
Yeah, I think in the area of the logistics, movements of the materials, by the transporters, whom they commissioned to do that. I think they not really learn, much less in that regard, because it's still the same set of people, that they contracted, to deliver these materials, and they failed, in 2020 in previous elections, and of course they have also let us down, now. Of course, we will not be able to blame the INEC totally, because of course, the transporters themselves, they are also Nigerians who should have this patriotism to see this process, go through, seamlessly. But they have also let not just the INEC down, but the entire, citizenry, of Nigeria, So I think they should also be called. There should be a kind of inquiry, into the activities after this this period, because they are the major, this is more than about 48 hours after the election, and we are yet to get, release of the results because of the delay, that my colleague mentioned, earlier. Now in one of the states that morning, when they interviewed one of the presiding officers of one of the polling units, that why are you just starting now at about 11 a.m. He said that they were conveyed in the same vehicle that other ad hoc staffs were also conveyed, that and they had to go and drop them first because their own polling unit was farther, than their own. So they were conveyed in the same vehicle, about 5, staffers of 5 polling units were in the same vehicle. That means, they didn't have enough vehicles, or maybe they wanted to maximize profits, and minimize costs, conveying different, they would have done it maybe a vehicle per a polling unit, or maybe 2 polling units, the ones that are close.
They are close
yes,
to each other.
Close to each other. But this one now, you say you go and drop them first. Let's say from the presiding officers and statements, the distance between his own and the other one is just like maybe from here to Lugbe, for instance, which is far.
It's far.
So you go and drop them first before coming to drop these people here. So they started very late. So it's a major problem.
I cited the example of newspaper distribution again during our newspaper review.
Yes.
When you've been involved in logistics management for a long period, some of these things are just turn out to be nothing but excuses. But let me re-invite our attention. Before the elections, were we chasing shadows? If I say we now, all stakeholders, apparently, were we chasing shadows when the point was being made that no, there's no naira scarcity, the cash crunch. And then they will also say fuel scarcity, this will affect elections. Nobody complained on Saturday that because you didn't pay the transporter, so they didn't move. Yeah. Nobody complained on Saturday that because they had no fuel in their vehicles. And the assurance was that the roadworthiness of those vehicles had been certified by the Federal Road Safety Authority in the various locations where they were. So again, until they have done their own internal postmortem, that's why I was saying, were we chasing shadows? What probably were those critical issues that perhaps somebody dropped the ball? I would be reluctant, for instance, to query the INEC chairman, who is at the headquarters in Abuja. These things are matters for the RECs. Yes. And the administrative, what did they get right? What did they get wrong? Arms free.
So apparently there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect, and this issue of the disconnect between what happens at INEC headquarters and what happens within the state. The resident electoral commissioners, the whole coordination issue, has been a major talking point in even the discussions around, electoral reforms, because we also see that a number of the states may also have a different objective in terms of how they carry out the assignments, around the elections, because the headquarters, may mean very well or have very fantastic intentions in terms of how the process will play out. But if the states fail in terms of their own responsibility for coordination and sometimes behave as if they are not answerable to the headquarters, then you definitely have some of these kind of challenges, we've had. So, and in the end, headquarters also has a limitation in terms of how they can, push the states, to do
micromanage.
Yes, to do some of those things, they need them to do to get the process moving. So this is also a major gap that in the process, has to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. We have in the studio joining us Chief Ezenwan Wago. He's the chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. We're trying to get the assessment, from our guests on the 2023 elections that took place on Saturday. Let's get yours.
Well, sorry, I came late, but at least I got a glimpse from where you were to the point in which I got into the studio. I think that we have stressed the challenges that we're going to confront this election, and you could bear me out. The problem with public institutions in Nigeria is denial and what I call defensive public relations, always wanting to cover up. If you have a problem, you put your problem out on the table. There was no way the controversial cash crunch was not going to affect elections. INEC vendor relationship was impacted heavily. So if you needed 100% deployment and what you have resources for is 25%, you put your people in a place where they become beggars. They have to beg in good times. If you remember, and I said it in this studio, in good times, logistics is INEC's biggest nightmare. In good times. In the challenge of fuel crisis, in the challenge of lack of money, those guys were virtually sweating under their skin. And in many places, especially in the FCT where we went to, they had a bravado facade. But when you eventually burrow in and talk to them, they tell you. But again, as Humphrey said, the challenge is you tell an EO, we bring 162 vehicles. He will bring 68. And then start telling them to be going back and forth. Go, send the materials, then come back to pick.
Next people.
So, and that disconnect between the headquarters, and even when you call and say, look at what is happening, is they say, no, you don't understand our system. You civil society people, you don't understand how these things, as if there is a class you have to go to understand how to simply take material from one point to the other. I think we need to come to a point where we are open. And it's coming from where this secret service, civil service thing about, you cannot talk, you have to follow process.
You're talking about the bottlenecks here.
The challenges, that's one. The other challenge is the fact that you are dealing with technology. Right here, if you remember Oga Kingsley, so I said here, under promise and overperform. We had a situation in which we had raised the expectations of our people in a way that didn't recognize that we were dealing with technology that can have problems. In whatever way, the glitches can come. No matter how best you prepare, you are dealing with something that can give you challenge. And so in talking about it, I thought there was going to be moderation. So technology became the challenge. The beavers, we were here in this studio, we were talking about facial fingerprints. They said, oh no, you know, the mock testing, we have learned lessons. Electoral election audit ought to be useful in the sense that you can draw from the lessons and then begin to, and then you have scenarios, you build scenarios, 25 of them, you put them out there and say, look, if this happens, this will happen, this will happen. That way you inspire confidence. But when you overpromise and say everything is okay and people start holding you accountable, you say, no, they are hitting up the polity. You are the one who raised the expectations. If you said, look, it is possible we're going to have challenges, and that when we have those challenges, what is important is that there is determination to resolve those problems. And that is what I've seen INEC now continue to do. They have recognized there is a problem, but I see in them that determination to solve the problem. And sometimes there are honest mistakes, and it does happen. So if you have honest challenges, if you are able to come out, the communication within INEC was weak, extremely weak. It took 48 solid hours to tell Nigerians what problem you had with posting results into the IRF. 48 hours. The same statement you have currently issued suffices. The one that has come out now suffices in the first 20 minutes of that challenge. So you allowed conspiracy, you allowed the theories of sabotage and all of those things. And I have said that the biggest challenge for us in communication in elections is, for me, the management of winning and loss. In between it is, what are you saying? In between it is, what kind of people are you putting out in the media? In the crisis situation, you don't take hotheads and put them on television who don't understand what the issues are, and they are just everywhere saying what they don't understand. Oh, they have sabotaged. Oh, INEC has killed everybody. Oh, and it's a challenge for us as a people, that managing information and understanding that election is what it is. 18 political parties on the ballot, one will be the winner. There is nothing you can do about that. It's one person that will be the winner. So now results are in the polling units. All of these results that we are talking about, they are polling unit centric. So if you have party agents in your polling units, you should have results. Every other thing we are doing is to enhance the transparency of the process. We post results in the IREF. It's so that those of us who are in America, who are in Canada, who are Nigerians, who are interested in this process, on a click of a finger, can have an idea of how this is going. But you, that is the political party, if you are serious and you know what to do, you should have your own results. You should mine your own results from, and if you are honest, at the break of time, you can honestly tell yourself how you are doing. There are no issues about it. So when you don't have party agents all over the country, you don't have any, and in this studio, I spoke about the sin of exaggeration and its implication for heating up the politics. When you say, I'm everywhere, and then the statistics is showing that you could only deploy polling unit agents to 46% of polling units in the country, and you are saying the people are your agents. The people are, how can the people be your agents? INEC says, send in your agents who will observe, take results from your district, and can use ordinary phone. You are blaming INEC, which is okay, because there's a clear dereliction of duty on their part to do what is necessary to improve the confidence and integrity of the electoral process. You that have your primary responsibility is you didn't do your own. You have no idea what's going on across the country. You win in one place and you are celebrating that they have rigged in other places where you are not.
Okay, Ezra, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. I'm tempted to stick with you because we've taken 2 rounds of questions with the other 2 guests. Earlier, you did say, by way of example, you tell the officer who is in charge of a jurisdiction, bring 162 vehicles. The officer brings 68 or 62 vehicles. We cannot say we don't understand what's going on. But Arms Free earlier was also talking about the apparent disconnect between the headquarters and the RECs, that's to say the state offices of INEC. Have we sufficiently tried to interrogate perhaps the lapses and the competencies at the state offices of INEC to be sure that at all material times they are on the same page with headquarters, so that even if the headquarters is over-promising, they can also know that, listen, this is an assignment for all of us. The headquarters can make a promise in the belief that these things will be done down the line. And then, of course, as is the balance, the typical Nigerian lingo, say you fall their hand. That's to say you let them down. So have we paid sufficient attention to the competencies and inadequacies or even the strengths of some of the INEC state offices that are supposed to be the fulcrum of activities that would then be coordinated at the center?
4 years ago, FCT was a challenge. At the, what's it called, at the local government elections, FCT, reports are there, was a huge challenge. What does that tell you? Leadership, that connection, who investigated it, who took time, and even when attention was called, it was explained away. It's a general Nigerian problem. Meet a policeman on the road, and he's doing something wrong. He will say, call IG. He will tell you. He will tell you, call the IG. So we already have a system in which we are territorial. Even imagine if you have a gate man and you are inside your house, imagine what the gate man does to people outside. Many times. So except you are detailed to be able to come out and say, come on, I don't want this kind of thing. If people are looking for me, please call me. That's power is something that our people enjoy, and they mismanage it, and they don't care the consequences. And I'm saying this with deep consideration as somebody who in the field, and that is the value of civil society report. That is the value of the reports that you have, and that's why I talk about election audit. Anybody who pretends to you that they don't know that there is a disconnect between INEC headquarters and their state offices has not interacted with this process. You are looking for simple data that they have. They will tell you to call, and especially if they think you have anything to do with headquarters. It even promotes anger that you are coming from headquarters. So it's something that we need to deal with, and I think INEC has sufficient information around these issues. What have we done with the reports of 2011 election? You postponed the election in 2011. In 2015. 2019, you did postpone. Indeed, 2011 was postponed.
No, was 2011 postponed?
Yes. But it was postponed for insecurity. The argument that was put out was insecurity.
What of 2015?
2015 was postponed.
2015 was postponed for
logistics.
No, 2015 was for insecurity, 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
On account of the Northeast.
Yes, but
then 2019 was for logistics, 1 week.
But check back. You will see that the crisis, if you check all the reports, international, domestic, election observers for those periods, logistics was number one.
A constant item.
A constant item.
And it still reared its head again.
No, it will rear its head because we are going to move on. As soon as it is Friday of this week, the temperature, the analysis would go 360. Oh, God gives power. It is God that gives power. We didn't vote again. No, it is not democracy. It's not theocracy. God gives power. And then everything that happened here, we will wait for another period and create another emergency until we put our foot on the fire and say, let us learn. What are we learning? What can we do to ensure that? And that's what other people do. They learn. They take their material and say, study it. After this election, INEC will pack all its senior staff. They will go on a retreat to look at what has happened in this election and the lessons learned. When the time comes, you will still see the same issues. What did we see with voter registration? How chaotic was it? Why is it difficult for people to get ordinary cards? We discussed it in this studio. Just to collect card, you make it horrific for your citizens to the point. Okay, we leave that one. Campaign, ordinary candidate selection. Oh, this party, INEC has recognized this one, court has granted this one. We are just like that. And when we move on to the point where we just want to pass it on. And until we learn to learn and take lessons and do what is right, we will be stuck here.
Dr. Aroro.
So many things have been said. But I just want to add that, no system is completely, foolproof. But the issue is the capacity of INEC to be able to troubleshoot, when things are going wrong. Now, of course, in every system, you should have plan A and plan B. Although sometimes you usually say that you only have plan B when you're not sure of plan A.
But they say no plan is perfect.
No plan is perfect.
Yes.
So INEC, of course, has not learned from the previous mistake because they still use the same process in the logistic, activity. Now we have well-established, private, mass transits in this country that can handle this thing very seamlessly. Now, many of us don't even use, sometimes we don't use these motor parks, these normal public motor parks where we are traveling. We use private mass transits, private vehicles, to when we're traveling because we want effectiveness, we want efficiency. So then why are you still using the same system that has been failing us? Why not, get this well-established, private mass transits? And in the final analysis, you discover that the costs, what you spend, will still be about the same thing, and you get proper service for what you are paying for. So I think INEC should look into that very well, because I know some of these unions, these motor park unions, they have affiliation with government and so on and so forth. So they have some kind of, they can easily access these contracts. But we must begin to look beyond them. If we want to get this thing right, we have another 4 years to plan for the next general election, presidential election. So we must begin to plan, now. So INEC must live above board to be able to satisfy Nigerians. Look at the election that day. Look at the election money that day. You see that Nigerians were very, very keen to vote. You cannot say there was voter apathy. In short, there was voter overzealousness, that day. So Nigerians have played their role. It's now left for INEC, to play their role. Every stakeholder has played this role except, INEC. And of course, it's INEC because we hold responsible. We will not hold the drivers because they were given the contract by INEC, office. So INEC will be the one to be held responsible. So INEC has not done their job very well in that area. But for the fact that the election head, as I said before, is a plus, to us.
Okay, Dr. Iroro, thank you very much. Gentlemen, and my colleague, Jumain, let's just talk about briefly. I want to talk about briefly before I bring in Ansfree again, in terms of logistics. I've already used newspaper circulation as an example when hard copies of newspapers were the in thing. I also said in the course of our newspaper review this morning that there is a chartered institute of logistics in this country. Logistics, that's their business. And without seeking to advertise them, because they are very well, everybody knows about UAC, United African Company. I mean, it was on account of RONC, Royal Niger Company, which now later became UAC, that Nigeria was formed, that as we know it today. There is a division in the UAC called MDS, Merchandise Distribution Services. Their business is logistics. It's MDS. When in major cities, you will see them, and they do their business quietly. You talked about logistics, distribution, and so on and so forth earlier. They do it quietly. So why then would you be going to, I don't know. I'm being hesitant to say the things that ordinarily everybody knows about some of these transporters and what they could do to mess you up depending on their mood swing. But back again to, shall we now say, the state offices of INEC. As I said, I'm reluctant because even the FCT has its own rec. So at the state offices, away from the headquarters, are they sufficiently capacitated? Are we looking to be sure that we have the right caliber of persons? Because it's not sufficient that the person is called rec, you are nominated. There are concerns about the quality of persons or caliber of persons who are nominated as recs without meaning any disrespect to them. But at the end of the day, are these persons that can help you deliver? Because election is both emotional, election is also economic, it's political, it is consumer, it's critical. Do we have the right caliber of persons who can be competent systems administrators to help deliver what the headquarters has conceptualized?
So I think the results or the outcomes of the process, give us a clear indication that, the answer to that question is, a resounding no. Because you can have a situation, and this is really very instructive because we're talking about public funds here. Billions have gone down the drain in this process. And if this was, in our personal capacities, we'll be crying blue mother because but sometimes maybe it's because it's public monies. We do not feel that we need to push enough to get accountability because the outcomes have actually not even tied into what we can describe as value for money. So it means that the people, the personnel superintending the process across the various states do not have the capacity. They apparently do not have the capacity, and beyond that is the fact that the supervision framework is disjointed. So they can, carry out these activities, not implement them well, and at the end of the day, life goes on, like Ezenwa mentioned. Life goes on and nothing happens. And even in terms of the reverse, logistics, those, you can see the time is taken for results, to actually come in. And in several instances, you are having computational errors. People can't even put the figures together for the elections. Like in one of the states this morning, I was watching where the process, some of them had to be sent back, to go and reconcile their figures. So if you actually have that happening on national television, people are saying that the figures cannot even add up in terms of how people voted. Then what level of confidence are we pushing? And that has also fed into the narrative because in this election we also had a lot of youthful energy, and part of that youthful energy is going in the negative direction, and that negative direction is in the young people making declarations that INEC is trying to do something untoward about this process. INEC is trying to subvert this process. That is a narrative that is out there. And like I mentioned earlier, the crisis communication did not move enough quickly to be able to douse these feelers. In fact, you actually already now even had people inciting, people talking about people should come out and things like that. This is what happens if the process does not go seamlessly. And already we have trust deficit in the political process. So these kinds of situations would definitely increase the trust deficit, and that could result into a crisis that is not planned for.
Let me very quickly make a correction. You were right. There was postponement also of the 2011 elections.
Exactly, yes.
That voting had already commenced in some states.
We're already on the field.
The elections were shifted by 2 days. And the reason that was given on that occasion, late deployment of election materials.
So you see, thank you. The for me is first, I've been worried about the communication, and that's where my interests have been. What are we saying? When there is a problem, what are we saying? In spite of everything we are saying, there are things that have gone well. Mm-hmm. And those things that have gone well needs to be projected alongside what hasn't gone well. But incidentally, there's also the challenge, and Ansfree just mentioned, you see, when people talk about youth, there's this sense in which we are beginning to think there is a homogeneous youth. Youth is intersectional. Intersectional in the sense that, as we speak now, there is APC youth, there is PDP youth, there is Labour youth, there is AAC youth. Every political party have their own youth, speaking, talking. There is Igbo youth, there is Yoruba youth, there is... So, when we are analyzing youth, we also need to see them from the lens from which they are speaking, and that they are not speaking one voice. So, if I'm a member of a political party, I'm a youth, I'm talking in a partisan sense, and oftentimes I may not be dealing... So, we need to be listening to who is talking, and what is that person saying, and how much understanding does the person have about the process, for instance. So, if you go to a place and you went to vote, and they told you to come and vote without PVC, you can be happy that you have voted, but you have not voted. At the end of the day, if what is put in the IREV does not match what is in your form ECA 8, you wasted that whole day. And so the lack of knowledge of that you can be seeing. So there's also the issue of training for the officials, voter suppression issues. All of those reared their heads. But those are analysis for after the election. The challenge of logistics for INEC is what you said, sir. Procurement is at the head of everything we do in Nigeria. Chronism and patronage. Appointments will not be merit-based. We did, as civil society, protested the appointment of certain resident electoral commissioners. In this studio, I did that and said, look, there are people you have appointed who have partisan interests. And the National Assembly told us, you did not swear affidavit. There was no affidavit to back. The merit of what we said was not important. It was whether they became a court that was looking for affidavit evidence to corroborate whether what we said. Even when we showed poster of somebody who ran election in 2015. But so we live in denial. The question, what Ansfree is talking about, connection between the INEC knows that. And I made the point that it is not just we are people, everywhere we are, we like to be the boss. We don't like anybody telling us what to do, even when there are rules, clear rules to follow. If you are the boss and you insist on that, they say you are very wicked. That wicked boss. When you hear wicked boss in Nigeria, what does it really mean? You have to interrogate. It's just a man who is saying, can you do the right thing? That's the man we call wicked boss. So the way we behave has tailored us to the kind of outcomes that we have. The man who is bringing 68 vehicles instead of 162 vehicles will not want what Dr. Iruru talked about, where you do a proper bid. These private companies is talking about where they don't have the capacity, they can have a match, they can match together and say we will do this. But if that happens, sir, what will happen is that wreck cannot corner this remaining, that remaining vehicle, and all of that. So it is because we are leaned on private gain, and in wanting private gain, we abuse public trust, and that is what Transparency International calls corruption. So if we are going to get this right, INEC communication strategy needs to change. And the only way you can inspire confidence is openness. If you tell people what you're going through, they will understand. Because everybody is not foolish. There are people who will understand what you're saying and believe you, and then take it out there. If when we saw the statement yesterday, we assessed it. We felt that this was soothing enough. And it became our responsibility to make it go out there so that people can, because when people say there will be crisis after election, let there not be crisis after election, what are they saying? What is the thing that they are saying, really? What should cause crisis? There is a court. If the process, you feel cheated by the process, you go to court, and we have seen episodic judgments that have restored mandates and validated the ones that were not.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Ezewa.
Yes, Ezewa has raised a lot of pertinent questions here, you know, and I believe the INEC officials are watching and listening to this program so that they can have a takeaway from our conversation. You know, I'm going to bring you in here. Nigeria is in the eye of the storm right now. The international community is watching to see what happens in Nigeria right now. But they say we have to go for break. I'll throw that question to you after this break. We'll take a break right now. When will return? Okay, the break is not ready. Yes, like I was saying, the Nigeria is in the eye of the storm. The international community is very interested in what happens in Nigeria. Somebody was even saying that this election should be a proof of life to the world to see how it plays out. But continuously, every election year, this monster continues to rear its head. Intimidation of voters, insecurity, you know, snatching of ballot boxes. This time around, even the beavers, because they said the beavers cannot, you know, be interfered with. The beavers were taken by talks and taken it away. So what kind of message are we sending to the international community that indeed Nigeria can run an election effectively, efficiently, so that the rest of the world will breathe a sigh of relief? Because they say if Nigeria, you know, sneezes, the whole African continent catches cold.
Yeah, of course, and thank you very much. Now, we know that Nigeria occupies a very strategic place in Africa. In short, we believe that Nigeria is the trigger for Africa's development. So if the trigger fails to work, that means the development of Africa, you know, ceases. Now, if you look at the National Coalition Center, you know, you see the number of chairmen of election management bodies from other African countries, many of them, and even in Western Europe, you know, election observers from Europe and so on and so forth. That means Nigeria's democracy, you know, being consolidated is a priority, you know, to many persons. And that is how we should also see it. You know, perhaps some of these persons that are causing these unnecessary orders in the process of the election management don't really understand, you know, the weight of the damage they are doing, you know, to the body politic of Nigeria. That is why they are doing it. You know, so because if they see Nigeria, sometimes I used to tell people, my friends, that they should view Nigeria as an outsider. You know, that is when they will appreciate the damage, the carnage we are doing to Nigeria. If you view Nigeria as an outsider, say as an American, as a Briton, as a Chinese, that is why you will appreciate the weight of damage that we are doing to ourselves. You know, so be that as it may, it becomes very, very, you know, critical for us to, you know, to ensure, you know, that the process, you know, of our electioneering, you know, goes very well. The youths, the Nigerian electorates, you know, they have done their best. Nobody will say that they have not woken up to their responsibilities. You know, they have. You know, and posterity will judge them, you know, for it. You know, but now their expectation being delayed is turning to tension to the country. And that will even worsen the situation that we already find ourselves. Now, our election cannot be better than the kind of society that we find ourselves. Nigeria, you know, as a country, is a country that is characterized by a lot of, you know, antinomies, a lot of, you know, situations that border on insecurity, you know, corruption, and so on and so forth. So people are trying to re-image Nigeria in their mindsets, you know, whether giving Nigeria a second chance to show that Nigeria is not the kind of country that they have been thinking or, you know, saying it is. You know, so this election would have been an opportunity, you know, to re-image Nigeria in their mindset. Of course, Buhari has promised them, you know, when he went abroad, that he's going to bequeath a legacy of credible, free and fair election to Nigeria as his major legacy when he leaves office. You know, I think that is being sabotaged, not by any other person, but by the Independent National Electoral Commission. because if they have done their bits, they would have been able to materialize that promise.
Okay, Dr. Iroro Ezenwa-Nwagu and Ansfree Ajanako, gentlemen, and my colleague Jumai, we're going to have to take a short break. But just before we proceed on the break, we need to remind ourselves and our viewers as well. We're discussing challenges because those challenges would need to be rectified going forward. There were over 176,000 polling units. And the tone of our conversation this morning, or the complaints that you've heard from voters and so on and so forth, do not refer to all 176,000 polling units. The elections were clean in most of the polling stations, but of course there were also issues in several others, which is why we are raising them so that we learn the right lessons and then move on therefrom. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. We've got a short break now.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We had to let one of our guests go, and it's Ansfree Ajanako. He's the Media and Election Expert Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. He has other assignments to run. And also joining us in the studio this morning, though he came in a bit late, is the DIG Operations Force Headquarters. His Adeyinka Bode Adeleke is the Deputy Inspector General of Police Operations Force Headquarters. You're welcome.
Good morning.
Actually, he just came into Abuja this morning. That's why he's a little bit late. You're welcome. Have you been listening to us maybe via radio or something before you came in here?
No, I've been in transit, but...
Okay, we're trying to get the assessment, of the elections that took place on Saturday. Let's get yours.
Generally, the election of Saturday, which continued, which dovetailed into yesterday, if you want to measure in terms of percentage, we can give ourselves a pass mark. It's not been that bad, though there are pockets of violent conduct, misconduct, which I don't think we should totally condemn. That's the type of society we operate from. There's no perfect setup. That's what I would say.
Well, DIG, we had you on Good Morning Nigeria at least on 2 occasions ahead of the elections. How did it go in your view? In terms of the security threats, in terms of the risk assessment and the response of your men, where did you have the most trouble? And what kind of trouble was it?
Our greatest problem has to do with the conduct of voters. Our assessment of votes should not only be the turnout itself, but what is the conduct of people that turned out. There are some people who are hell-bent in not allowing the process to finish, maybe coming out to deliberately snatch already prepared voting process. But generally, the last time I came, I told you that those elements that were actually out to cause insecurity, to survive the election itself, those ones could not succeed. But the ones we saw were those ones that were after the result of the conduct of the election. And I told you that it's always better to go to the people than go to INEC or go to the security agencies. People who are to be policed must be ready to be policed. People who are coming out to vote must be ready to come out to vote. Even if you have complaints, there is a way you do it, that the conduct of the election will still move on, not violently.
Okay, so we've seen some security challenges, like my colleague Kingsley said, not in all the polling units, just a few. And the INEC commissioner and the INEC chairman had to call for reinforcement of security, especially to protect the beavers. So can you tell us what were the missing links in the security arrangements here?
We can't say that we had missing links. While those intervention units were kept, which means we expected that there might be problem. And when there's problem, they'll be coming to come and intervene. That's why they are there. But what we are saying is that we want to appeal to the people, even in the next election, that they should not allow us to use these intervention units as much as we use them. If their conduct is fine, the conduct of the people is fine, you don't need to intervene violently at all. If people are properly queued, if they are voting, if you have complaints, if you go to INEC and your complaint is being processed, not that when an election is going on, some people will be protesting. It's not really fair. But generally, we need to realize the number of voters we had and the number of polling booths we had. If you look at it comparatively, you realize that we can give ourselves a pass mark, like I said.
DIG, thank you very much. I want to bring in Ezenwa again before we'll come back to you and Dr. Iroru. One heartwarming development in the course of this election was resistance to attempts at vote buying. They may have succeeded in some locations, but there were a number of viral accounts of the EFCC, ICPC, apprehending persons who were seeking to buy votes. Some of them, of course, they had the brand new 1,000 naira notes, the same money that we cannot find.
Which I have not seen in 4 weeks.
Yeah, they had it. One person was arrested. He didn't have money, but he had wrappers in the boot of his car. So after doing to see and buy, they will give you the wrapper and so on and so forth. But I mean, not to make light of it. The AFCC deployed in 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, but a number of arrests were made. Is this something that we ought to build on so that we know that there were bank transfers earlier? We had called on NFIU to check transactions of persons who were making certain amounts or making transfers. Some people had also given out gas cylinders. We got to learn. But on voting day, there were quite some arrests that were made. What's your comment on this?
I really do not want to justify this controversial cash crunch in any way, because doing that will be to continue to elevate when people use a different drug. You have fever, and then you are using drugs that can cure stomach pain. And if you had a little relief, you then give the impression that the drug that you use for stomach pain was what had cured your fever. Vote buying is a crime, and it's in the remit of law enforcement. If it continues, it is not fiscal monetary policy that cures a law enforcement challenge. So if we have people buying votes and we have not been able to deal with them through the known intervention that we are seeing the EFCC do now, NFIU, the Nigerian police, and the rest of them, we cannot use that intervention to justify it. Having said that, I think that our law is very loose on voter inducement. It concentrates voter inducement to the polling unit area and the polling unit. But the things that happen after, that are clear issues of inducement, cannot be captured. There are interventions that happen legitimately, and I underscore that, during election, towards the election period, that are actually targeted at voter inducement. And everybody knows it, but we paper over that. But we concentrate on that point. So if somebody cooks and brings to the polling unit, the law says it is treating. And treating is in our Electoral Act, that sharing of food and drinks near the polling unit area is against the law. So people bring those food, share them. Law enforcement people who understand the law don't think that is voter inducement. But that clearly is. So the attack on the Naira will succeed if we have clear law enforcement engagement with that, and a mindset issue. But I also want to say that election is a passion enterprise. The reason for the law is because the law understands that there will be deviance. The idea of the law, if everybody was going to behave well, there is no need for law. So the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security was designed again in 2015 to begin to deal with these issues in a more collaborative manner. So, and then there are budgets for it. Money is put into it. NSDC has money. The police has money. In fact, everybody is on police duty anyway. The DSS, the military, everybody comes out, and there are rules for each of them. So the architecture that they design is that there will be people in the outer layer. Then there will be people who carry arms not too far away from the polling unit. And unarmed policemen will also be in the polling unit. So if we have, whether it is 8%, like we have, 8% of infractions, ballot box snatching, that is unnecessary to those who are snatching it anyway, okay, or violence against people, it is not, we must not reduce it and say no, you know, and do a chest thumping around the fact that, you know, it is the scale is not high. The truth is that we have to be talking about value for money. If we deploy resources for these things not to happen, and they happen, then we should go back and do an audit. The policeman who ran away when people come was trained not to run, but to call for assistance. That's why there's armed people that are close who can come to support him. But when there's a challenge and he takes off, and then we celebrate it, and you see cameras showing him running, it does something to the confidence of the citizens that our law enforcement has capacity to protect them if there are challenges. But I'm also coming, the visitors that we have, because we keep talking about visitors and how it impacts on us. Election is a passion engagement. America did not get their own election right. They still have not come out from. So when visitors come, we should not, because of visitors, begin to think that, you know, if there are things that go wrong with our elections, that it impacts. It is a learning for many of them. Many of the countries that are in Nigeria today, their population is just the population of Lagos, who are here to land. So when we are talking about a country with 176,000 plus polling units, 87 million registered voters, that is the population of Malawi, Gambia, all put together. No,
Malawi, Gambia. No,
no. What I'm saying is that all of those, when you pack
those countries,
when you pack Tanzania, all of them that came
even
here,
Europe.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Their population. So we are dealing with huge challenges. Our appreciation of it is important. So I'm just saying that when we say, oh, these visitors, everyone have their own challenges. But what is important is that we need to place squarely the responsibility. When people derelict on duty, I don't like explanation. Okay. Do not explain to us why things went wrong.
Okay.
Tell us what you are going to do to make sure it doesn't happen.
Ezenwa, thanks a lot for your viewpoint. DIG, you recall the last time you were here on the eve of voting, the question came up about the capacity of some officers who are on the beat to apprehend offenders, to apprehend a situation that could get out of control and therefore call for help. Again, we will stress this fact, 176,000 polling units across the country, but there have been a few viral videos of voters on the queue being threatened to either vote for a political party or get out. Another person was also recorded, making threats in different parts of the country.
Professor was caught with...
Yeah, and there appeared to be no law enforcement response to such threats, to say, look, this is not allowed. Are these the kind of things that we need to work on, or it was just one of those things, DIG?
Not just one of those things. There are things we need to work on. That's why I said there is no perfect situation. Let me go to the issue of restriction of movement. We restricted movement from 12. On the day of elections, you realize that myself, on my way while going around, I had to stop in places to stop people from moving. He got to a stage in a particular place that was hold up. You see, at that stage, that will not begin to beg them when we've said 12 to so time, there is no. And why we had these restrictions was to stop these bad elements from moving from one point to the other. If you are in your polling booth, it's difficult for you or somebody that lives around your area to subvert your electioneering process. People that are going to come are people that are likely come from far areas. But even the elites themselves were moving around that day. They will brandish their voters card to say they are going to their polling booth. Do you want to stop us from moving? These are challenges, and like I said, since it's not a perfect situation, our improvement should be on the police, the security agencies, the INEC, and the people. And like I keep saying, and that's what we should go back to, the people they are too important. For example, there are two people to police a polling booth. Those two people to police a polling booth, and unruly one person can unsettle a polling booth. That's why our voter education should be serious on the people. On the people, your conduct. If one person decides to be seriously unruly in a particular polling booth, he might mark that polling booth. So these are discussions should center more on our citizenship. Do you want this system to collapse? That's that particular process that is going on where you are voting. If there are about 2 or 3 people arguing and it's on top of their voice and it becomes very unruly, the people will concentrate on them. The people to conduct the election will not be able to conduct properly. Even the INEC officials, when they see that the place is uncomfortable, they will become uncomfortable too. So that's what I'm saying. But we will need to continue to improve.
No, but is there anything that can be done at the material time that an offense is being committed? Because some of these videos that have gone viral, you could see that the videos were amateur videos shot in panic. Oh, some thugs have come, they are disrupting the voting. whether in part of the voting in Rivers, in Edo, where ballot boxes were being destroyed and ballot papers strewn all over the field. What is a voter supposed to do at that material time? If there's a law enforcement officer, what is the role? Is there a system that will probably have a panic button, even for the officers? Because there's one video that showed an electoral officer, a presiding officer, I imagine, who was running away after he was being attacked, and he was assisted into the corridor, one face me, I face you apartment like this, where they said, oh, okay, he still had the presidential ballot box, he had the, I think, the Senate box, it was the House of Reps box that they took away. But how can they communicate with law enforcement officers in that situation so that it can be avoided next time? Because if a hoodlum knows that help is on the way, I think the hoodlum probably will think twice. DIG.
I'll still go back to our conduct. If there is violence, sudden violence, when this violence was to take place in a polling booth, most of the time it doesn't build. Somebody that has planned to attack a polling booth will just come and attack. The people there, they will call for assistance. The assistance they are calling for, the people will need to move to come and assist them. There are times the damage is done even before they come for assistance. And before they come for that assistance, that particular panic that has been caused, the voters there are already unsettled. Before you get things into shape, it might be a bit delayed, but eventually you realize that most of the time they'll say, they recovered this from them, they recovered but that incident has been recorded that it has happened, which one cannot help.
But have there been arrests?
Many arrests. When next I'm coming to the studio, I'll bring the list of what we have done. We've arrested so many offenders in various areas where we had problems.
Because some of the videos showed the faces of those intimidating voters. Were they traced and arrested?
No, the issue of trace, if I tell you that they've been traced now, I'll be telling lies. But the ones that were found committing offense in those places of offense, they've been arrested. And all those other ones that were recorded, they'll be arrested. We've subjected it to investigation.
So are we going to see a prosecution?
Like our electoral law says, we are not prosecuting this time. Okay. We are going to arrest, we are going to investigate, and hand over to INEC to prosecute.
But does INEC have the power to prosecute?
Yes, that's what the electoral law says now.
Okay. Let's bring in Iroro now.
The Constitution, I think the Constitution overrides the Electoral Act.
Okay.
The security agencies, especially the police, has the power to enforce all laws. And that is important to underscore. If you have power to enforce all laws, the laws committed during election are already in our books. If somebody slaps me, it is not election slap. The slap is not election slap. It's not election slap. It is slap. It is violence on me. And there is a law that is not restricted to election that deals with doing that. If somebody displays violent conduct, there is a law that deals with that. So, you see, the challenge that I have is that we're already outsourcing. We constantly outsource. And what worries me is that it is not ignorant people who do this. It is very learned, experienced people who exploit loopholes and think that in dealing with a challenge that we should not be able. So I need to underscore that point, that the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security was set up for muscle addition. So if you don't have the strength, you can draw it from the other person. Where we have a challenge, Oga City, is not in arrests. It is in what the DIG, with due respect, just said now. When you pass it to INEC, when you call INEC here tomorrow and say 2019, how many arrests were made, how many were prosecuted, they will say the file, all the file is with the police.
Okay, I understand. I think our viewers get a sense of what you are saying, with regard to prosecution. Again, it boils down to how the charges are drafted. Where, for instance, you draft the charge to make it appear as though it were an electoral offense, where, for instance, you're talking about just pure either felony or misdemeanor as an infraction of the laws, the person can be prosecuted. If a thug stormed the polling unit and then stabbed a presiding officer at that polling unit, there is no point in my opinion, in framing it as an electoral offense, unless, of course, the punishment will be higher if it is framed as an electoral offense. If you frame it as simple assault or occasioning bodily injury or some other criminal charge, I mean, there are ways of, I don't want to get into details of drafting charges on that criminal procedure. That can also go on, so that the many more of these elements that can be brought in, that will be fine. You talked about being slapped at a polling station.
You said it's not an election slap.
It says it's not an election slap. I will refer you to an essay that was written in 2004. That essay was circulated again in 2022, following what happened between Bianca Ono and the wife of the outgoing governor of Anambra. The title of the essay is Taxonomy of a Slap. Just Google it and then you will see what it talks about slap. Dr. Iruru, Electoral Act 2022 was intended to be a game changer.
Yes.
Are we letting the Electoral Act down by our conduct, or all hope should not be lost just yet?
Okay, and thank you very much. I wanted to add something to what the DIG and Mr. Ezenwa talked about regarding the offenses. Now, I think it also speaks to the fact that we need to, as we have been saying, have this electoral offenses commission. Because the DIG talked about passing the list of offenses to INEC, for them to prosecute. If we have that commission, it will be able to deal with the issues, with dispatch. I just feel
we don't have the commission.
Yeah, we don't have it now. So people have been campaigning, for the establishment of such commission, where we talk about the unbundling of INEC. And I just feel I should say something, on that. Now, regarding the Electoral Act in 2022, I think one of the reasons why that act was passed and one of the reasons why it was amended, to provide, for a lot of changes is because it's to forestall some of these things that we are seeing now. The release of funds way ahead before the election, and all those things. I think we have not really seen the benefits, of such provisions, for now. So if different bodies, had campaigned, clamored for the amendment of the Electoral Act, and brought in all these additions, all these beautiful additions, and yet we are not seeing the fruits of all these additions, then I think we still have a long way to go. However, it is not to say that INEC has failed, woefully. Like we have said, there are many polling units, where the elections went on very fine, very smoothly. There are many polling units where INEC officials arrived also very early. It is just a few of the thousands of polling units that that INEC officials arrive late, and then the security officials also. I must confess, in many of the polling units, they conducted themselves very well. Because now the DIG was talking about the voters, being sometimes unruly. I want to say that there are many polling units where the voters arrived, very early before the security officials and the INEC officials, and they had already formed queues by themselves and giving themselves numbers.
Yeah.
So it's not a general phenomenon.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Iro. Let's have the closing remarks of the DIG here. We have another election coming up on the 11th, the state elections, and that is something that Nigerians are looking out for, and I'm sure a lot of activities will be taking place during that period. So what are the lessons learned from the presidential elections, and what will you be looking out for in the governorship elections?
Good. It's a fact that we have another election, another round of election coming, but let's note that even this one that we are in is not fully concluded. Results are coming in. Our attitude when results are coming in matters a lot. If there is an infraction or there's a little problem in my area, I should not go on here and generalize that there is chaos everywhere, that there is problem. I shouldn't cause panic. I shouldn't incite people. Because the results are coming in. In election, I am not an election expert, but I know that at times it might not come your way. It's not compulsory that because you have put a particular measure in place, that the election must be favorable to you in terms of result. So we are still in the mood of election. As results are coming out, if people have complaints, let them do it in the normal, genuine, legal way, not to cause chaos. Then the next election, what the mistakes we have made as security officers or security agents in the first one, we'll try as much as possible to rectify it. INEC should try as much as possible to do an assessment of what transpired in the last one and improve on the next one. Then the people generally that always refer to, and these people that are referred to are politicians, voters, Nigerians generally. The next election, let's conduct ourselves better. When we say we are restricting movement, not that we intentionally want to restrict their fundamental, infringe on their fundamental human right, but it's for a reason, it's for the general good of the people. Let us go to our polling booth, conduct ourselves properly. If in most of these polling booths that you see, if we collectively go against the people that are doing the wrong thing, you see that they won't do the wrong thing.
Okay, Adeyin Kabode Adeleke, Deputy Inspector General of Police Operations Force Headquarters, thank you so much for coming on the program. Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you. And Chief Eze Wanwago, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reforms, thank you for your insightful input into the conversation. Dr. Iroro Stephen Izu, political economist and development expert. He's a lecturer at the Department of Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja. Thank you so much for coming. And earlier on, we let go Amsri Ajanaku, Media and Elections Expert, Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. He has another assignment he had to go to. So that's how it's been on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget our Verdict 2023 studio will open exactly at 9 a.m. Thanks so much for your time. Kingsley?
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning for another edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Look after yourselves and have a nice day.
I am Jumma Yusuf.